All right, everyone. I have a really sweet treat for you guys today, which is I'm interviewing Lauren Eliz Love, who is the business babe. And we are going to dive into a whole ton of stuff. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Ina. I'm so excited to be here with you. This is going to be, I haven't been this excited for a podcast interview in quite a while. So that says something. I'm very excited.
This is going to be amazing because I've been following your path, your journey for a while. So this is going to feel like an interview of 60 minutes because you're going to be like, how did you even know that? So I can't wait to ask you all of the things. All right.
I'm here for
So
all of it.
why don't we start with you saying really briefly, who do you serve and what do you help them achieve?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because I think a lot of my students get stuck on that, right? Who are you? What do you do? What do you help people with? And my answer to that question is always evolving. But in this season of my life, I really feel connected to the concept of helping women who are running businesses transform themselves. Because I've seen time and time again how this story we tell ourselves that strategy is the most important thing, marketing is the most important thing, funnels and opt-ins and all of this masculine stuff, it's necessary, but at the root, if you're not doing your inner work to become an empowered woman, a confident woman, a woman full of leadership, no matter how much of a strategy you know, your business is not going to generate the success you desire. So our method has always been transforming businesses and the women who run them, because growing a business is really about growing yourself. So that's really what I do. And I love it.
I love it. And we're going to get to how you got here. So, you have published a book, which I have on Kindle.
Oh my
You
God.
have, you have dozens of online courses,
Yeah.
from low to high end out there. You're helping people all the time through your mailing list, your social media. You never disappear. You're always there. If it's not to teach, is to share, is to help people grow. And I just first want to congratulate you on all your successes. You were featured this year on Yahoo Finance as one of the top 10 entrepreneurs to watch. So this has been amazing. We're going to dive into how all of this feels, but I want to go back to the beginning. So you are a producer on a news show. You are in New York City. That's your job. That's what you do. How, walk me through, describe the moment when you decided to quit your job to start a blog.
I gotta tell you, you're like the best interviewer because like you mirror and share like I'm like, wow, yeah, like that's a really, wow, I did that. Like it's really cool to see how you hold space for this dialogue. So thank you. Yeah, I was a television news producer for CBS News. I worked on the CBS Evening News for about 2 years or 3 years. And then I went into working for the morning show with Charlie Rose and Gil King, CBS This Morning. Did some work for 48 hours and 60 minutes. And it was the job that, all of my, I would say like my fellow peers in journalism school would have loved to have. Like I had quote unquote made it, in the timeline of graduating and getting a job. I was probably one of the most successful students in my graduating class. And I really hung on to that as um, sort of a significance badge of honor, right? Look how much I've achieved. I worked so hard. And I really poured myself into my education in journalism school for various reasons, right? I was a little bit of a hard worker. And in television, I had these expectations from like what I learned in journalism school. They talk about like the Walter Cronkite era, and this was a time where news was objective and it was all originally created, and there were amazing stories that you would read about or watch on the news. And I really sensationalized this purpose that I created for myself, which was I'm going to help educate people and inform people and change people's lives. And then I get there and the news media industry has certainly evolved since the ages of the 50s and the 60s, right? And so now it's really about what's trending on YouTube today and what's on Reddit and what Instagram thing went viral. And it became just this job of recycling stories that other people were creating. And I remember thinking like, man, I want to tell original stories. I want to tell meaningful stories. I don't want to like replay some video of like a guy and his dog. Like, I want to make my own important impact. And it was that drive and that desire coupled with what I started to see, which, and this is like always hard to talk about, the trauma of being in television news is not often discussed. You know, when the Boston bombing happened, I was watching a live stream and editing videos of dead bodies. You know, when the Newtown school shooting happened and all of these, you know, young children were murdered, I was calling local photographers in Connecticut and asking if they had ever photographed these children so we could use the photos on our live stream. It was hard and really traumatic work. And I remembered, you know, dedicating and giving up so much of my life to this path, you know, not going home for holidays, working 16 hours in the newsroom during election nights or breaking news stories, staying in hotels for big, you know, like the storm, the Sandy, I think it was Superstorm Sandy, you know, I didn't go home for like a week and a half. I was in Manhattan. So it was just all of that coupled with the fact that I was doing deep inner work on myself at the time. And I remember feeling like I was changing and growing, and this old platform of television just didn't really serve me anymore. So there were a series of moments, right? It was like looking at people who were really unhappy in the television industry, who had been there for years. And I'm like, wow, they're miserable. Is that what I have to look forward to? And it was also feeling a calling to really help other women find their confidence and their strength and their power. And it was also just being really tired. Like I was working midnight to 9 a.m. at the end of my career, and it was hard on my body. So it was kind of all those things. And I just took the leap one day, and the rest is kind of history.
So thank you so much for sharing that. I was like, it was hard for me to remain
Yeah.
composed when you were just saying that. Like I legit just want to like break out crying right now. I
Yeah.
started to get goosebumps. That's really, really tough.
Mm-hmm.
So when you finally decided to do this, your first impulse was, well, I want to start a blog. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that decision was like? Why a blog? What were your goals back then? What did you want to do with this?
Yeah, great question. So, I wanted to start a blog because when I was on my path to healing, and when I say healing, I mean like I was healing from an abusive um, divorce. I had ended my first marriage. I was healing from alcohol addiction. I was healing from not taking care of my body for many, many years. I was healing insecurities and lack of self-confidence. And I was doing a lot of work around my mental health too. And so as I started to grow, I remember at the time watching certain people who had blogs, specifically Lauren Everts of the Skinny Confidential and Elsie Larson from A Beautiful Mess. And I loved that they were making money off of sharing their life,
Mm,
right? They each had very different life paths. You know, Lauren Everts talked about beauty and fashion, and Elsie Larson talked about DIY and home decor and a little bit of cooking. But it was just like really cool to see these women who had passions for things that um, were just aspects of life. You know,
mm,
they weren't like, oh, I have a passion for um, journalism or news, or I have a passion for engineering. Like it wasn't anything that like, you know, structurally you would major in college, right? But these were like passions that they had that were aspects of their life, and they documented them through storytelling and photography and videos. And I watched over the years, I probably was watching those people since their first year of business, where they had, you know, maybe 5,000 people on Instagram or less. And now they have hundreds of thousands. Lauren Everts has a million something. And, you know, I watched them grow
mm.
and I watched them evolve. And I remember feeling such pleasure reading their eloquent and yet colloquial style of writing. I mean, it was so simple, right? Like they would talk, like they would write like they talk.
Mhm.
And in journalism, there's all this pressure to like write professionally and like make things look, sound smart. And I just love that they were kind of breaking the rules, and showing up to share their own perspectives on really normal aspects of life. And so I watched these women grow. And I remember like probably like the last 3 months of my television career before I quit, I like went and stalked their archive and went like all the way back to the beginning to see where they started. And I'm like, man, I've been following these people for like 4 years. And in 4 years, I've done nothing. And look at where they've gone. Like, why am I waiting? Why am I waiting to do this? And I had started so many blogs and stopped so many blogs over the course of my life. And um, I knew what I really wanted to do was to talk about the taboo topics of healing for a woman that are often really not discussed. There's such taboo conversation around mental health. There's such taboo conversation around sexual trauma, right? And I have been through so much in my life in those areas that I really wanted to um, verbally heal, or in the written form heal myself, but also inspire other women to heal these aspects of their own lives. So I thought about it for like probably 3 months, and it was so sad. The more I thought about it, the scareder I got, or the more scared I got, and the more scared I got, the more I drank. And so I was really like pushing myself down this rabbit hole of fear. And one day I just finally blurted out to Matt. He was my boyfriend, and we were living together. And I was like, I think I want to quit my job and start a blog. And I was like so scared. I'm like, all right, this is the point where the man I love rejects me and tells me I'm crazy and that I'm irresponsible and that my dreams are stupid. And I was so afraid. And he was just like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so then we took like our last vacation on company dollar. I had like 2 weeks left. I'm like, let's go to Chicago. So we went to Chicago, and I just remember like running up and down the water and realizing like, I'm done with my job. And it felt so, it was like so liberating to make that choice and so freeing. And yeah, I was scared and I didn't know what was ahead. And it was financially really, really hard in the beginning. But yeah, I made that decision, and we came up with a plan, and it was a tough plan, but we did it. And gave myself a year and built a beautiful empire. So rest is history.
And to say that it was a hardship is kind of like a total understatement. You guys ended up moving into your boyfriend's parents' house, both of you. What was
Oh my
that
God.
like?
It was hard. It
Yeah.
was really hard. So we crunched numbers. We were living right outside Manhattan. And so our apartment was like really expensive. And he was commuting a lot back into Connecticut, which was like sometimes 3 or 4 hours of commuting a day. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And so, there were sacrifices we have to make. And I tell, women this all the time, like, the reason that these goals and these dreams and desires you have feel really scary is because they require a higher level version of you to like show up and take the action. And also because you've never done it before, right? And so, yeah, there's some big leaps required. And for me, we pulled my 401k. I think it was like $15,000 I had or something like that, and put all of our things in storage and moved in with his parents with our 2 dogs. And we had to put our mattress on the floor in his old childhood bedroom. And like, yeah, for a year, that's where we were. But I just kept telling myself, like, this is going to work. This is going to work. And I poured myself into it as hard as I could for a year, giving it everything I got. And just started to really believe that my success was not a matter of if, it was just a matter of when. And if it's a matter of when, it's like, well, let me figure this out real quick. And like, you work hard to get there.
I confess I'm tearing up right now just hearing you say that, only because as I will mention in the intro, I haven't recorded it yet, but as I mentioned, you were my first global phenomenon that I followed. And when you said just now that it wasn't a matter of when, of if, it was a matter of when. I just got all this sentiment because I'm like, I probably heard that for the first time ever from you.
Yeah.
And what you just explained that you were doing with the other influencers, like going back and checking out their old stuff, I'm like, that's what I did with you, right? That I was studying you the same way that you were studying these influencers. So as of this point, you have built an incredible community. You have 40,000 followers on Instagram. You have 24,000 people in your group. What does it mean to you to have so many people follow the way that you were following all of those
Mhm.
other big names?
That's a beautiful question. It's leadership's not a responsibility that I take lightly. I think it's really our moral obligation as women to always be leading. The Dalai Lama has this quote. I heard this a while ago. The Western woman will change the world. And it just gives me goosebumps to think about, because for so many years, we as women have been taught to do things the way that men do. And we've been conditioned to wake up, go to work hard, come home, wake up, go to work hard, come home. And it's like this rinse and repeat um, cycle of craziness, right? And a woman is very emotionally driven, and she has a cycle that not every day is the same, and we all know that from experience. And I think we're really in a season of identifying what it means to be a female leader.
Hmm.
And there's no rule book or guidelines for that. And so many of us are learning. Some of us are learning the hard way. I myself have had learning moments that were not as graceful as I've wanted them to be. But I think that leadership, um, when in the hands of good-hearted people, uh, is what is going to change the world, right? Because for me, I spent many years of my life as a woman feeling misunderstood, feeling trapped, feeling unheard, feeling lost, feeling unhappy, right? And the reason for all of that was because I wasn't fully embodying my truest self, right? And so as I'm leading community, I'm always trying to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to give women permission to be themselves. Because once that happens, and you're yourself and you're in your purest essence of love and joy and creativity and leadership and confidence, you have a ripple effect on your whole entire life. That type of woman can raise an incredibly beautiful family. That type of woman can help her parents and their parents, and can help the man on the street corner, right, who's maybe having a hard day. And that's where the ripple effect comes in. So yeah, it means a lot to me. And I love my communities.
I mean, it's incredible what you have been able to accomplish, because everything you're saying, I just want everyone to know like how real it is, and how deeply your community feels your vulnerability and your realness, and you're being a true person, a bone and flesh person who's going through trials and tribulations all the time. You have not made any kind of effort to appear perfect. This has been a true journey that you take everybody with you. And anybody who follows you can attest to this and raise their hand and say, yes, that's exactly what Lauren says and what she represents.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you started to have some success in your business, right, you transitioned from your blog to starting actually offering online offers and putting yourself out there. And I actually want to skip all the way ahead to 2018. You have the Badass Business Babes brand. It's flourishing, it's growing. That's how I got introduced to you, through that brand. And then in 2018, in December of 2018, you hosted a summit that you called the 12 Days of Business.
Yeah.
And that was, from my perspective, a huge turning point in your business. Your group blew up overnight, acquiring thousands and thousands of followers in just like a month. And we're watching this happen. And I'm like, how did this happen? So I really want to go back to see if you see it the same way that I see it. Was that a pivotal moment, or am I missing the mark? What were the other things happening at that time?
Yeah, that's, a really beautiful observation. And I love, how much information you know about my path, because I'm like, oh yeah, wait, like that happened. 12 Days of Business was actually a download that I got outside while I was walking my dog. And I remember reaching out to my team at the time and being like, I have this idea, 12 Days of Business. And like, and the team members I had at the time were like, okay, like that's a lot of work, but okay. And it was really the first time where I allowed other experts to be seen on my platforms in a really concrete way. It was for 12 straight days, different experts coming on to share and talk. And it really allowed my community to see the diversity of different authority or leadership voices that that were out there. Um, and yes, the community blew up really quickly. I think, if we look back, I think before that there were like 3,000 or 2,000 people in the group, and then it went to like 20,000, overnight. And I think that was a really powerful lesson for me in the approach of leadership is about lifting up other leaders, right? Leadership is about showcasing other people and allowing other people's voices to be heard. And that really was profound. And so it's now something we do every year. We have another round coming up. We don't always do 12 days because it is a lot. But yeah, it's just, I think, and that's like a really important lesson too. And like, I think some people feel scarcity come up around bringing other experts into their platforms and feeling like, oh, well, what if they like them more than me? Or like, well, if that's the case, then that's beautiful. Like you just led somebody to their teacher. And if money is truly abundant and prosperous, if you're holding space of service, you're always provided for, right? And so just having that mindset of just being able to spread the love, spread the support, and let people know of all of these beautiful people who have such amazing gifts in the world.
If somebody's listening to this and want to study that event, what do you think were some key, like business-wise, some key factors that made that event so successful?
Yeah, so it was summit style. So basically what that means is you're creating a platform space, whether it's a website or a series of emails that people get, or if it's in a Facebook group, or if it's all of those things. It is a specific date of having different experts come and talk for, a certain amount of days. What really worked for us was selecting influencers who were, and I use that term loosely, but just like different coaches and teachers who were all at different levels. And I think sometimes when we're growing business and we're pitching ourselves to have experts on our podcasts or experts in our Facebook groups or on our Instagram, whatever, we tend to like go big or go home. And what actually worked really well for us was picking people who were at our level or who maybe had just a little bit smaller of an audience, because audience size really doesn't mean much. If your audience isn't engaged, it doesn't matter how big they are. And with smaller groups of people, what tend to happen, we noticed for like an influencer who maybe had 5,000 or 4,000 people, they were so excited to be featured on our platform that they talked about it even more. And then that brought their audience into our space. And so that was really important. And it's something that we do every year to make sure that we have a variety of people who are of different caliber and level of teaching. And I think also too, the important thing is to have an intention. What is the overall theme of your summit experience? What is the overall, topic that you're covering? This year, our business is really personal development based, and we're bringing experts to talk about a lot of inner work stuff. So, just sitting down and getting clear on like, what is the theme of this experience that I want people to have? That's really helpful.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. So,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you next about partnerships. So, in our business, we have the option to create partnerships, and there are great success stories out there. There's Jen Gottlieb partnering up with Chris Winfield and creating Super Connector Media together, and that just blowing up the internet, right? Like over the past few months. You have Amy Porterfield teaming up with Devin Duncan, and they had a beautiful partnership, which eventually they decided to part ways, and it kind of ran its course. And then we have partnerships that just simply were just not a great idea.
They don't work.
And you were very public. You and your partner at the time, you were very public about, and everybody should, I will put the links to the podcast episodes where you guys discuss this, because you guys were very open about talking about how your partnership came about, how it was incepted, and then eventually a few months later when it disbanded, what were all the feelings that were going around it. So for anybody who wants to find out more information, you should check out your podcast. I will put the links in here. But I wanted to ask you if you could share with us a little bit about that time and how you look back on it. If you can give us just a little bit more context so everybody knows what I'm talking about, and tell us how you think about it now.
Whew. Yeah, I think so. It's so interesting, that you bring this up, because this is something that I have been really reflecting on in the season of my business. And I think Matt always jokes with me when I remember stories and life experiences, we always remember things like a little bit differently than they actually happen. So like, yes, please go listen to those podcast episodes, because I have no idea what I was feeling back then, but I know what I'm feeling now, and it might be different. But yeah, so I forget how, okay. So collecting my thoughts here. When I was in Los Angeles, we ran this event called it was called Unleash Week. And what we did was we put 6 or 7 women in a retreat house in Los Angeles and did 3 days of inner work with them. And then the next 3.5 days, they would go to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. So it was really great. It was an opportunity for me to kind of prep them and nurture them and do some inner work with them and some business coaching, and then transition them into their beautiful experience with Tony Robbins. And in that event, we held space for my team to come in and have the girls ask the team questions, and nobody really had questions for the team. Nobody really wanted to talk to the team. And this was really a painful thing for my team member, who wanted to be seen and wanted to be heard and wanted to be, valid in the eyes of this beautiful community that we were running. I think it's also important to note too that there are some people who want to be employees and want to work for people, and then there are some people who don't. And if you're building your team out there, it's really important to note that if any of your teammates have this dream or this desire to be their own entrepreneur and create their own business, they're probably not a right fit for your company, right? Because deep down, they're always going to have this desire. And no matter how much success you create and how much financial success you can pour into them, they're always going to feel like your dreams are coming before theirs. And that can create some resentment and some frustration, right? And so that's kind of what was happening for us. And at the time, I was going through such a fear of rejection and abandonment, right? I had 2 clients in my life. I had a friend that I was like breaking up with. There was just all this feeling of like fear of abandonment coming through. And when my partner, who was just my employee at the time, was expressing this feeling of like, I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I'm not enough in this partnership, I immediately sacrificed my business vision and said, okay, come be a partner with me, we'll be equals. And that wasn't really what she wanted, and it was a real lesson for me, because I was giving up this vision I was creating to make somebody else happy, when actually that wasn't really what she wanted, right? And so we went on this whole path of feeling torn and confused and not really knowing like how she fit into the business. And what's also important to note too is like partnership in its natural form, like when you're birthing something together, is really beautiful. It's so amazing. But when you're already building something and then you bring somebody along and you're trying to fit them in, like that was a whole roller coaster. And I was about to go to Costa Rica. It was right before Bismas, and she just made the decision to leave the company. And so she sent us a message and we got on a call, and she said, today's my last day. And that was really hard for me. And I think it's just really a lesson in always learning how to trust your gut and like trusting what you really want, even when it feels scary, because the truth is my business vision never really was a partnership. but I tried to change it to make somebody else happy.
Mm.
And your business should never be, your business vision should never be sacrificed to just please other people. So that was a really beautiful lesson for me, a beautiful moment. And I wish her nothing but love and happiness and the best. And it was a great teaching experience for me.
Yeah. And thank you so much for always being so open. Like I said, anybody can go to your podcast and really see what your business journey has been like every step of the way.
Yeah.
And, with partnerships is one of those things that I always tell people, like you said, like you have your vision for what you want to do. So if somebody else is coming along, you can start with collaborations, right? Like start with like collaborating and see how that feels. Like don't get married on the first day, right? Like, date a little bit and see how that goes. And
That's
I
a great
encourage,
analogy.
right? And I encourage everyone to kick off as many collaborations as possible, because we're all going to be getting asked to do partnerships. The bigger we get, it's like, okay, let's collaborate. It's a
Yeah.
great comeback, and I really appreciate you being so open with this, so we can all learn from it.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, if someone is listening and they are in a position to start a partnership, or that is an opportunity that's coming up, what would you say are some key things they should keep in mind, some red flags they should watch out for, so that they can make the right decision?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, it's really important that you and this potential partner have the same values. I say this even with our hires when we're bringing people into our company. It's not about skill set. I think sometimes when we see partnerships, we're like, oh, but she has a big audience, so it would be good for me. Or, oh, she has this tech skill that I don't have, so it'd be good. That's all great. Like, it's beautiful to have complementary team, and have people have different skill sets. But I think what the most important thing is the values of the people that you're bringing on, whether it's a partnership or it's an employee. If that person values service, if that person values open communication, if that person values creative passion, right? And growth, that's a very different person than somebody who values financial success, or somebody who values needing to be right. It's very, very different. So please, I would say, make sure, when you're bringing people into your energy, even friendships, right? Even partners, like the values, like my husband and I are so freaking different, Ina, like we're very different people, but we have the same values, right?
Mm-hmm.
We value people who have open hearts, who communicate clearly, right? Who are passionate. And that's, really important when you are building your team and allowing people into your space. So that's first and foremost. The second thing is be brutally honest in your communication with love, always. Now when we build things, or when we're bringing people onto our team, or when I'm thinking of collaborating with somebody, there's always open discussion. It's like, look, this is what's going on. This is what I'm available for. This is what I'm feeling. And really, when partnerships fail, I think most of the time it's a reflection on the growth that we as individuals have to do. So I look back on my relationship and that partnership, and I've learned so much, right? I learned so much about being certain, and so much about communication, and so much about my values of leadership. And so, really allow these partnerships to teach you. That's really, really important. And I would say too, like, have really clear expectations and boundaries. Boundaries, especially because when you're building partnerships, you really want a good relationship with that person. It's really helpful to work with people that you like to hang out with. And you don't always want to be talking about business, So we just had Alyssa, my integrator for our company. She came into Sedona, and we had, 3 days that included work, but also included play, and creating that variety is really, really important. So I would just say, make sure that you're shutting off work sometimes to go have fun with your partner.
I love that. And speaking of partnerships, we want to talk about a different kind of partnership.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about this sisterhood that you have with Catherine Zenkina, Jen Casey, Ashley Gordon, all global phenomenons in their own right? I wanted to know how you think this sisterhood has impacted your decisions in your life and in your business.
Immensely. I think, it's really hard to lead women when you have wounds around being seen by women,
Mm.
right? And when I came into these friendships, all of them kind of happened at different times, but all of them had a very similar theme of teaching me how to allow myself to be seen by women that I admired and loved and respected, and wanted to like me, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with that, there was a lot of wounding that came up, around feeling like I wasn't good enough to sit in the circle, or feeling like I wasn't, I was too needy or too emotional, right? Like a lot of my patterns as a child came through in those relationships. And what I realized was that when you admire women and you look up to them, and at the same time, you feel enough to be sitting with them at the same table, your leadership quadruples,
Mm.
because there's no fear of wounding or fear of failure, fear of not being enough. This is really where sisterhood work is incredibly important to financial liberation, because when you do feel like you're worthy for the people around you, you also feel worthy for the dreams within you, right? And the desires you have. So yeah, it's been really helpful. We do girls trips every year, like 3 to 4 times a year. We go to different places, and we just play and have fun. We naked sunbathed last trip. The trip before that, we were like on Malibu Beach. Like it's been beautiful and very healing for me. So especially because I have so many old stories around women growing up that were so painful.
Yeah.
It's been really helpful for healing all of that.
And can I ask you, because I've always wondered if these friendships that you have with these incredibly enlightened women, I mean, they're all so amazing in their own right, if they influence in any way your pivot. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about how going from, the business babe, this is about growing your business, to moving to stepping more into that healer
Yeah.
quality that you have, that I have always felt coming from you, of being so in tune, so spiritually in tune with other human beings, that you are able to heal them in such a beautiful, such an easy way, something that I've been able to witness by being inside your programs. And I always wondered if, hanging out with all of this enlightenment, all these amazing people, if it had an effect in you saying, it's time for me to step into what I love. Can you tell us a little bit more about your pivot and how that came
Yeah.
about?
Yeah. So, I think every entrepreneur goes through this, where you find something that you're really good at and then you run with it. And then somewhere along the line, you realize that what you're good at may not necessarily be what you're meant to do. And what you're meant to do, you're even greater at, but you've been
Right.
like afraid of it or avoiding it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like as I've, done this entrepreneur thing for 6 years, I've really identified that there's like this healer energy that like comes through me in a lot of my calls and group programs, and really choosing to embody that. I think my sisterhood relationships have given me full permission to be myself, to hear those messages from spirit that show me what I'm meant to do and where I'm meant to go. And when women fully see you, it gives you permission to fully see yourself. And so yeah, I think indirectly it's been really helpful, for honoring that. And also too, I think, these sisters see me, and they see me the way that you see me, right? Like you can see each other, and sometimes that's really helpful when you're like in it and you can't really see yourself. So, but yeah, switching from identifying as business babe to just being identified as Lauren of Love, right? Because my name is Lauren Eliz Love.
Mhm.
That's been really liberating for me, and just knowing that I can take this business wherever I want, and I don't need to fit a niche or an ideal client.
Mhm. I love that. I hope that everybody can just take a little bit of that freedom, especially as they're starting out, and give themselves permission to do what they feel they're called to do. Most times we won't really know what that is until we start to take action. And that's exactly what happened. And it's been a pleasure to watch. Let me ask you, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful online businesswoman?
Mm, that I feel successful. Um, like biggest misconception, we see people and we're like, wow, she's so successful. Really though? Like, like I don't feel that way. Yes, I feel successful. I feel like I've accomplished a lot. I feel proud of myself, but there's still so much that I want to do. Right. And so this approach of like, wow, she arrived where I want to be, like, okay, that's great. But like where I am now, I want to go somewhere else. Like I still want to go. I still want to move and expand. And so I think that's a big misconception. I think a misconception is that vulnerability is easy for me. I've heard that from so many people where they're like, you're so vulnerable and you just do it so effortlessly. And like, that's not really true. Like, it's a challenge to put yourself out there and to share. Like I talk about my ayahuasca journeys. I talk about my combo medicine. I talk about my Lyme disease. Like I'm talking about, and I've been doing that for this whole entrepreneur journey, talking about my rape, my suicide attempt, my mental health issues from when I was younger. So vulnerability has always been at the forefront of my business, but this idea that it's effortless for me is not entirely true. So I just want to put that out there, that it's a challenge for me too.
If you had the power to get the whole world to hear you right now, and they have to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have to do it within the next 24 hours, what would that thing be?
Ooh. That would be to live life through the heart space. I think that it's funny, when I picked this name for myself back in 2014, Lauren Eliz Love, I didn't realize at the time, but like this has been a journey of learning how to no longer live in my head and learn how to live through the heart. And what that really means is not letting fear run your life, not making choices out of anger, being able to express yourself fully, being able to live in alignment with your passions, right? Versus what other people want you to do. I would really encourage everybody to go on a journey to healing their heart, and really dedicate their life to looking at all the ways that they can live in their heart space better.
I love it. Lauren, this has been such an incredible pleasure. The highlight of my year, just talking to you. Thank you
Oh,
so much for doing this.
yeah.
I love you. I have learned so much from you. You are my original global phenomenon. I truly don't believe that even this podcast would exist if it wasn't for you. So thank you for everything, that you have been so brave to put yourself out there in the world and allow people like me to watch you go and say, I can do that too. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. And thank you for taking that message, right? Because everybody can do this, right? The global phenomenon, sure, is about people who are inspiring the world. But I think the real phenomenon is like, wow, we can all do this. Like that is, and it's so true. So for anybody out there who's listening, like, please just remember that, like, if you have a calling on your heart, if you have a passion to do something, like it's there for a reason and it's meant for you.
Where can people find you and follow you and continue to learn from you?
Yeah, so I would say go to laurenoflove.com, or go find me on Instagram, Lauren of Love, or you can go listen to the podcast.
For sure, the podcast, I'll put those links below. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me, sweetie.